Okay. New England Patriots, as we mentioned, looking for their first coach since 2000. Wild.
It's crazy.
How old were you in 2000?
I was in second grade.
I was a sophomore in
So
college.
however old that is.
Jesus. God, I'm old as crap. Pete Briscoe was like working at CBS Sports, which is insane. It's actually, I think that was like, I think it was Pete's first year.
Wow.
Should Pete Briscoe walk away from CBS Sports?
It does seem like all the old timers are kind of, going away.
Yeah.
Pete Carroll, Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, Pete Briscoe. Who's to say?
I just texted my thread with Pete. Pete, are you retiring? Okay. What the hell? Oh, okay, look. What the hell are the Patriots going to do to replace Belichick? Who wants to replace Belichick? Everybody and their brother is going to say Mike Vrabel. Do you think it's Mike Vrabel? Do you think they go internally with Gerard Mayo? What do you think they do? Steve Belichick?
First things first, when we talk about this, you have to note that there are actually two openings with the New England Patriots. They need a new GM and they need a new head coach. So I'm going to be interested to see on which one they fill first. Are we going to let the GM run the organization and then pick his head coach? Or is it going to be kind of because Andy Reid kind of runs Kansas City, but there's obviously GMs there.
When they hired Andy Reid in Kansas City, it was very much like when the Seahawks hired Pete Carroll.
Right.
Or when the 49ers hired Kyle Shanahan. If you got enough clout, you can say, I've got GM candidates I want to work with. And I think that has been the preferred method of smart franchises to make sure you pair up, because you want the two sides working in tandem. Do you think that Robert Kraft will be making these calls or Jonathan Kraft?
Well, that's the next question. I actually think this is a very interesting pivotal period in the ownership
really interesting
for the Patriots, because as much as we talk about, okay, Bill Belichick stepping down and moving on, and this is kind of the end of the dynasty, that third pillar is Robert Kraft. And Jonathan Kraft is starting to get more and more of a voice inside that organization. And this would seem like a natural period where he kind of gains a little bit more power, gains a little bit more sway, has control. Because at some point, he's going to be the owner. He's going to be the guy that's making the shots and calling the shots for the organization. This could be one of those moments where I think we see Jonathan Kraft a little bit more involved, or we hear his name a little bit more than we do Robert Kraft.
It does make sense to say, all right, look, Brady's gone, Belichick is gone. Bob Kraft is the voice of the Patriots, but to sort of do it in a way like Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, behind the scenes, where it's Stephen Jones is doing all this. Jerry Jones is the one talking, but Stephen Jones is the one doing all the work. Because you're right, eventually at these owners' meetings, Jonathan Kraft will be the one talking, and exactly. So that does make a lot of sense. I would assume it would be collaborative with Robert and Jonathan. They obviously have a very good relationship. Would expect that you. So all right, I think you're correct about that. I think they will look. Let's say if they're trying to find a way to look at Mike Vrabel, I think they would go that route that we talked about a second ago, which is, okay, Vrabes, you're kind of a jerk. I mean, in a good way, right? Like Vrabes is just hard to everybody says Vrabes, tough, not tough to work with, just he's intense. So is Bill Belichick. Do you have a guy I think if you go with like a Vrabel or a Jim Harbaugh, which I think is a crazy crackpot idea personally. I would, don't you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, if they want to make a splash, I don't know. I would see why the Patriots might want Harbaugh. I don't know why Harbaugh would want
the Patriots. Yeah, why would you follow Bill Belichick if you're Jim Harbaugh? I think that, but like if you go with a big name, then that's probably going to dictate what you do with the GM.
Yeah.
If you go with like a Gerard Mayo, just because of the unproven nature of it, then you are probably going to dictate who that person's GM is. And I think to your point, like it's hard to know for sure how the Krafts will handle that.
Yeah, that's the key piece as we kind of take these first baby steps in the post-Belichick era. I think you mentioned the two names, though. Gerard Mayo, if they want to keep things in-house. And you got to remember, last offseason, the Patriots came out with an unprecedented statement after another down year where they were saying, we're going into contract negotiations to extend Gerard Mayo. They didn't even announce the extension for Gerard Mayo. They announced that they were in conversations to extend him. And he obviously did not decide to go for head coaching interviews. So they really look at him highly. Kraft even was on record saying that, he could be the heir apparent. Now, things change in a year. I don't know how much Mike Vrabel's availability changes how they feel about Gerard Mayo. I don't think that the Krafts are a wishy-washy organization. I don't think that they're a group that makes decisions hastily. I think that they still view Gerard Mayo as someone who could be their head coach. Now, I do think that they should be diligent in their approach. I do think that they should look into a guy like Mike Vrabel. I think they should look at guys outside of the organization, depending on which way they want to go. This is the other thing, too. I mentioned the GM part of this. But what does Robert Kraft, what does Jonathan Kraft want from this organization? Do they want a from the ground up rebuild, or do they want to bring in a veteran quarterback and try to contend in 2024? Because those things kind of change the equation of what you would want in a head coach. If you decide that we want to draft a quarterback with the number 3 overall pick, or we're going to trade up into the top 2 to take either Caleb Williams or Drake May, maybe you want Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator for the in a young guy that showed that he could work with a young quarterback in CJ Stroud. If that's the road you go down, maybe you do something like that with him or Ben Johnson in Detroit. That's something that you have to think about. If you want a little bit more continuity, Mike Vrabel, Gerard Mayo, that's certainly possible. Now, if you're Mike Vrabel, if you're the Rob Kraft and you go for Mike Vrabel, you run the risk of looking kind of weird with Gerard Mayo, because you really did kind of promise, in so uncertain terms, you've promised him this job. And now if all of a sudden Mike Vrabel becomes available and you just jump to him, you do run the risk of a little bit of bad publicity, bad press there with Gerard Mayo.
Would Gerard Mayo work for Mike Vrabel?
That's the big question, right? And so you have to think about it this way. Gerard Mayo is the linebackers coach of the New England Patriots. He's not the defensive coordinator. He's never held that title. He's the de facto defensive play caller. But if you could sell him on, hey, we want to go with somebody with a little bit more experience as a head coach. We're going to keep you on as the defensive coordinator. You'll have that title. You'll have that pay, whatever you want to,
you don't have to follow Bill Belichick immediately.
Exactly. Maybe, but maybe that works for only a year. And if the Patriots defense is good in 2024, is that dude gone in 2025? And is that something the Patriots want? This is the kind of the problem with hiring a defensive-minded head coach. This is what I look at for the offense. I'm concerned if they bring in a guy like Vrabel or Mayo, that they bring in a hot shot, or hopefully a hot shot offensive coordinator. Well, typically that dude's gone in a year, and whatever quarterback you drafted or brought in, he's dealing with a new offensive coordinator, which in history shows us has been a death sentence to these guys in their development. So you have to be smart in your approach. I personally would like an offensive guy. As much as there's ties to Vrabel and Mayo, I would like an offensive-minded head coach, because I don't want to go through the ringer of bringing in new offensive coordinators year in and year out.
Yeah. It's going to be fascinating. I think coaching betting odds don't mean anything. Pretty worthless. They're all reactionary. But I think if I would guess that if you see it, you'll have Vrabel minus 100, minus 125.
Okay.
Maybe more, maybe like minus 200. I don't know. I don't think
Mayo plus 150.
Mayo plus 150. And then like Brian Flores 3-1. They'll throw like Jim Harbaugh in there 5-1 stupidly. Nick Saban will be 20-1.
Yeah, McDaniels 20-1.
I mean, McDaniels isn't in play, right?
No, I don't believe so. I think if we're talking about McDaniels in play, OC for wherever Bill Belichick goes.